Hi there. I am hopefully going to be able to do a full hour today, so welcome to anyone who stops by, anyone who happens to watch. For anyone who's watching this channel for the first time, I'm Bree Bo. I go by either, and I am a game designer with Thoughty at breezecs.com. I'm also a leadership educator at Leading with Class. Both of the programs have Patreons. You can find Leading with Class at patreon.com/leadingwithclass, and Thoughty is at patreon.com/Thoughty. I am today working on my game Turn, which I recently kickstarted. It actually ran throughout November, and we got $20,000 funding for the game and a number of stretch goals by people like Jay Foster and McGay Baker, and additional goals for myself. Today I plan to work a bit on the edits that I got from my editor, and I'm hoping that I'll also get to work a little bit on one of the stretch goals, which is a moose. Turn is a game about shapeshifters in small towns, people who can turn into animals, and one of the beasts that we unlocked was a moose. So I'm hoping I get to work on that a little bit today. I'm currently sweetening my tea, sorry. Thank you for anyone who haven't stopped by. I see people cycled in and out already, but if you do stop in, please feel free to say hello and tell me who you are. So the first thing is that I've been working on edits, and I'm really excited to get some work done, even though the editorial process is not my favorite. I'm much more of a get the work done and then be done with it kind of person. And so I decided to focus today on a thing that I felt I might actually have some enthusiasm for, instead of just responding to editorial comments. One thing that I need to do is go through and basically make some additional explanation of the mechanics and how things work. So that's what I'm gonna do today. Hi there, Callison the First. Nice to see you. I appreciate you stopping by. I'm hoping today will actually be interesting to watch. I haven't got to design on screen in a while. But what I want to do basically is I'm going to be going through the Turn document, as well as through the Some Things to Explain document, which is a portion of the Turn document, and trying to make sure that I'm addressing and detailing all of the terms and concepts and giving explanation to, what is a habit, and what is stress, what is stress when you take it, and stuff like that. And the document that I have already in front of me is the Some Things to Explain document, which is supposed to be able to be read aloud or used as like something for people to read individually. And the reason why it's structured like that is because I wanted to have an easy way for the town manager to give explanations. Because sometimes it's hard to describe mechanics, and how the mechanics work in Turn can be a little precise. So I wanted to give that guidance very clearly in a way that they could just read it aloud to people to answer questions if it would be easiest that way. We had some trouble with the files that I got from my editor, Tracy Barnett, and I'm kind of fiddling with that. So I decided that one of my best processes is to kind of manually review things and compare them to answer my own questions. So if at any point during this process you have any questions, please feel free to put a comment in the chat. I will be monitoring it. I love to answer questions and talk about what I'm doing with people. That's part of the reason why I stream. So please feel free to engage. But I'm going to get started setting up my windows, basically doing a side-by-side. I have so many windows, oh my goodness. So that I can see the documents that I'm working on. On the right side, you can see the turn document, the major document itself. And this is where I'll be pulling terms from. And concepts and stuff. And so one of the things that I know I need to explain that I have not yet, if I could avoid breaking my own document, are the habits, which are easy, tactful, subtle, and generous. And the instincts, which are on the beast sheet and are primal, honest, forceful, and amoral. And so what I'll basically be doing is explaining what these things are, how they function in the game. And that's harder than it sounds because they're supposed to be a little bit mutable. But I think that, they're important. You'll see here I also have a note that Tracy asked for me to describe flow of fiction, which I actually need to ask for clarification on because I have no idea what that means. I should know what that means. I've been designing since years ago, but sometimes I don't know the same terminology as what other people use. And I want to make sure that I'm clear before I spend time on it. But just wanted to make the note, so I came back to it. And before we start writing those down, I just want to go to, look at the character sheets so that I can basically say what is on the character sheet that needs to be described and make sure I have it in this document. So the first thing that's noted is stress, and I do have that. Stress is really important. It's basically the kind of currency in regards to your transformation, because you can be while you always have control of your actions, your body can be forced to change without you being able to stop it. That's what I call a force change. So maybe I should explain a force change. So let me go down to my list here. There's going to be a fair bit of scrolling, so I apologize if that's annoying on the screen, but it's a downside to working with multiple documents. So force change. So then after that I have I have your beast stress, human stress. I don't know if I need to detail these or not, so I'm just gonna put a question mark by them. A lot of design work starts out for me with gathering information, And it's important for me to show people my process in this regard, because I don't want people to think that like some of this work is just so quickly and easily done. It does take a lot of investment, a lot of reviewing your own work, which can be really hard if you're someone who is hard on yourself about your work. Like, I'm constantly second guessing my work. So I really like, I have to be real whenever I do the streams and stuff. Even when I'm working on leading with class, I like to be explicit about the kind of background work. Okay, and so human abilities. I do talk about powers and abilities. And yeah, that's brief description, so that's good. Shifter name. Bloodline is something big, so I'm actually going to move that up on my list here of what I want to focus on. Bloodline. So shifter name is pretty simple. You can have pretty much any name you want, but your bloodline is important in regards to your positioning in the town. Whenever you build your town at the beginning of the game, you write in bloodlines onto the town map. And these are there to help you basically like flesh out the people in the town, what kind of people there are in the town, give them names, as well as give your character a way to belong. Every character belongs to a bloodline, but they might not know what bloodline it is if they're a late bloomer or a beastborn. And basically the purpose of them is, one, to give you things to explore in who you are and where you come from, but also to kind of give like families an identity in turn, because families are very important in rural communities. So that's kind of what I need to explain in the bloodline description, is that kind of stuff. And birth month and age, that is important for me to address. And this is where I need to note adult only, because I have mentioned it elsewhere in the text, but turn is, you're only supposed to play like adults, so like legal adults. And part of that is because I am trying to capture a specific experience. And that is, I'm past the time where I'm supposed to be growing and changing and things. I'm supposed to know what I'm doing now, but I'm still growing and changing is part of the experience that I want to capture. So whenever I discuss birth month and age in the text, I want to also address how it is adult only. Identity questions and background questions are kind of self-explanatory. Habits. I know I address goals. And maybe I should address relationships. So, players have both PC relationships, and that's with other shifters, and NPC relationships with basically like mundane people in the town. And these are a human relationship. Most beast relationships are considered to be much more fleeting unless you have a animal group. And whenever you have an animal group, you name specific relationships in your animal group power. So that's how that works. And I know I talk about town exposure and exposure in here somewhere. Just want to see where that's at here. Yes, I did. And I think I cover it okay there. Cool. So that's, I think, all that's on that. I'm just going to look at the beast sheets, and they're so much simpler. So, yeah, I think I caught everything there. And as I go along and work and take breaks, I alternate with what I do so I can like go back and look and go through the town manager section and see what might need more detail there and stuff like that. It's just a easier way for me to go about doing the work. So we're going to kind of use this as an outline. I thought I described natures vaguely in here. So I need, basically this will be going in somewhere around here. Or, you know, in a detailed section later. But I need to break down what each of these things are. I'm having trouble seeing past my microphone, so I'm just going to lift that up a little bit. I hope that's not blocking the screen too much. No, we're good. So, please do let me know if you're watching, if you're finding this interesting at all or useful. I know my process can be a little wonky. I even brought in my Big Moose mug today. Oh, hey, Jerome. Thank you. Awesome. I'm so glad you think so. Yay. So, the habits are like the human stats, basically. And, one of the most important ones, like they're all important, but one of the ones that like can really affect the way you play your character narratively is easy. And whenever I'm talking about how you play your character, I'm talking about in this instance it affects your access to resources and stuff like that. So whether you have wealth or like any sort of power or whatever is kind of defined by you as a character. Like that's a thing that you have the strength to do in a super narrative game like this. Well, mostly a narrative game like this. There's still stats and stuff. It's not super. But easy is supposed to represent the basically the ease that you have in your human life. So this is things like financial resources, social clout. It can be things like, you know, political influence, or like creature comforts. So like maybe you have a really nice private cabin in the woods. That is like a human ease that's very nice, especially if you have amenities there. So you're like, you have hot water and everything like that. And it's supposed to kind of show that like however you decide to translate it, whether it is financial or physical resources or whatever, it's supposed to represent having some ease as a human that you wouldn't otherwise have, maybe as a different kind of person, as a person with a different background, or especially as a beast. These are things that beasts don't have. So, gotta try and figure out how to say that in text in a way that doesn't sound silly. So, easy as a habit represents the eases of human life and comforts. It can represent security, luxuries, future creature comforts, social clout, political power, or pretty much anything that a human can have that a beast is unlikely to have. And that could be considered privilege or comfort. I think that makes sense. Makes sense to me. So easy as a habit represents the eases of human life and comforts. It can represent financial security, luxuries, creature comforts, social clout, political power, or pretty much anything that a human can have that a beast is unlikely to have, and that could be considered a privilege or comfort. Sounds good. For those of you who are listening, if there's anything I put in here that sounds like not correct, like common sense wise, like it doesn't make sense to you, feel free to let me know. I can't always say that I'll agree with you, but I do at least want to, if you're hearing what I'm saying and reading what I'm putting on the screen, if it comes across as very confusing, as someone who is currently recovering from a brain injury, it's very useful to know. So, tactful. Tactful as a habit represents... This is like... social politeness and care in communication, as well as the ability to I'm not going to use big words. To withhold information or be dishonest. Humans have an easier time lying than beasts, and they have more experience bowing to the social pressures of communication. Polite communication. Hey kid, thanks for stopping in. What I'm currently doing right now is going through and describing the natures in detail so that it can be integrated into an explanatory section of the document, so that people know what their stats mean. And this is something I'd been planning on working on actually throughout the Kickstarter, but I just didn't have time. And Tracy brought it up, obviously, in the edits as they went through. So, just trying to get that done. Let's see. So subtle is like... So each of the sets of, like, the natures have different categories of their kind of what they stand for. So, like, easy versus primal is about creature comforts versus freedom of movement and of space and stuff like that, and like freedom to be expressive without worrying about like damaging things. It's about as a human, if you have a high easy, you have things that are really nice and that are worth coming home to. Meanwhile, with primal, if you have a high primal, you have a lot of connection to the wild, and therefore whenever you go into the wild, you can kind of break free. So that's kind of the like worldly kind of like environmental type rule stat. And then there's tactful and honest, which are about communication, like specifically typically verbal communication. And then subtle and forceful, which are kind of contrasting because they're both about your ability to do physical things, whether that be violence or other physical things, like might-based activity or whatever. Stamina, even, could be potentially related, like running really fast and stuff like that. And subtle is kind of the, like, you can choose to do things gently. You can choose to do things simply, like, without the intent to fully harm and stuff like that. But forceful for beasts is really about, they have needs and they're trying to fulfill them, and they aren't concerned necessarily about harming things in the process. They don't mind chewing through a wall or kicking something down. So it's, a little bit different. And then generous versus amoral is not necessarily to imply that beasts don't have generosity as a thing. This is kind of your, like, interaction with others kind of stat. Because generous is about, like, your concern for the greater good and people beyond yourself and those in your immediate circles. It's about altruism kind of on a larger scale. But I didn't like altruism because I feel like it, as a term, because I feel like it's often misunderstood. Because generous doesn't necessarily have to be about, like, utilitarianism, which is how a lot of people interpret altruism. It's about just, like, your degree of care for people beyond yourself. And amorality is in part a good thing because it's about the ability to step back and focus on yourself and to be selfish, and prioritize yourself. So that's why that is in contrast there. It's not, none of these are to say that one is better than the other. They're good each for their own reasons, and they have hang-ups for their own reasons. I hope that makes sense. So, when writing for subtle, I'd be like, subtle, a habit, presents the ability to do careful and precise physical actions, whether it's related to that extent, might, or distance. So, like, humans, so Jerome says, I really love these concepts pitched as habits. The idea that things that we do have or think because they're specifically unthinking, or at the very least low-level engagements. Yeah, it was important for me to not frame them as active skills, because, like, you can be skillful at some of this stuff. That's absolutely true. But some of it is just stuff that we naturally have an inclination towards. So, like, obviously, like, a wolf by instinct is not deceitful. They're more honest. They aren't going to be caring about, like, withholding something because they don't want to hurt somebody's feelings or something. But, like, people, we are as complex as we are, but still have, like, some things that we lean towards. Like, most people are not as likely to engage in extreme violence without hesitation. And humans, as like for the most part, do actually have like inherent social rules about politeness and behavior in regards to communication. So these are things that we like. The instincts are supposed to be kind of inherent because beasts don't like have as much of a social culture overall as much as humans do. Um, though they do have localized culture and group culture. But humans like absolutely like have norms and rules that we are expected to do. Uh, and they're habits that we build up over time. So I wanted to make sure that those things came through. So I'm trying to think of a word and I cannot remember what it is. And it's not it's kind of like care or something like that, but it's like they like people are uh they aren't as necessarily like forceful and forthright in their actions. Um Mindfulness is close. I think that might be better to replace hesitation. Humans generally act with more mindfulness. Thanks, Callison. I think mindfulness works. Regard is good too, though. Thank you both. Humans generally act with more mindfulness and are less forthright when taking physical action. Consideration is good, and I think that might actually make sense the most. Because not everybody totally groks the meaning of mindfulness. I know it's still, I guess, new in our like actual like modern lexicon, but I don't know, I'm spoiled. I took a class on it. Awesome. So that's subtle. Subtle as a habit represents the ability to do careful and precise physical actions, whether it is related to acts of stamina, might, violence, or resistance. Humans generally act with more consideration and are less forthright when taking physical action. I mean, I know we like to think of people as being violent, but people hesitate more. Because we have to like consider, you know, all the things that jumble up in our heads. People, when, you know, made into a base need situation, like, I must hurt this thing or else I will die, absolutely will be more likely to act. And there are different kinds of people, but yeah. Thanks, Jerome. I appreciate you stopping in, and I will be talking still for a while, so. So generous. Generous is like, what is your concern for people beyond yourself kind of thing. Generous as a habit presents flow of care and love. Has beyond the for people beyond themselves. immediate of influence. Highly generous person would have a bigger focus on greater good and well-being of others, even those we don't know. Yeah. So generous as a habit represents the level of care and love a person has for people beyond themselves and those in their immediate sphere of influence. A highly generous person would have a bigger focus on the greater good and well-being of others, even those they don't know. Cool. I think those sound okay. And they're nice and short, only like 2 sentences or so, which is what I want to keep it around. I think the instincts might be harder. Like, one of the things with the instincts is particularly, like, trying to make sure that some of these don't sound bad. Because, like, it's hard to make amorality sound good. But it makes sense to me, like, from a design perspective, as a creative perspective. So, but primal is the first one. And so, primal as an instinct. Wow, I really misspelled that. Primal as an instinct. It represents freedom of movement, and expression, and I'm gonna put a period there. In the wild. Primality. I think that's a word. Primality? Yeah. So primality is what allows beasts to behave with a certain level of freedom and keeps them from being tied down. This is actually, if you ever look at the character sheets, you'll notice that bears are not super primal because they actually have like a den that's like somewhere that's important to them and that they go back to all the time. And they also are more likely to like make friends in like the scheme of turn specifically. Bison, even though they have a herd, are more primal because they are actually like herding animals that move from place to place and like in the wild anyway, and who like are very like known for being powerful and allowed to be kind of like scary a little bit. And like bears are scary too, but we have kind of culturally woobified them. And then cougars are like super primal because they're, you know, mostly like mostly solitary, though they do socialize more than we actually think like thought originally. Like they found that they sometimes couple up for like traveling and stuff like that with other cougars, but they also like they have like a huge territory that they're mostly in control of and all this stuff. Like the primality is really related to like what ties you down and stuff like that. And that's part of the reason why like cougars and stuff particularly struggle with how you can't leave your town. It's always one of the hardest things for them to deal with. I hope all of this makes sense. I've thought about it so much in my head. Honest. So, honest. As Kit says, not that we've seen a cougar struggle with that in play or anything. Yeah, I think every time I have a cougar in the game, there ends up being like this to do over how they are just kind of stuck, and it's hard for them. And cougar and late bloomer tend to overlap a lot. Like, people will play them that way. We've had, I think, 3 people build cougar late bloomers. And that's the only one other than, like, I think raccoon show off that's recurred. Which I think is kind of odd. But I think it's because the late bloomer has all these, like, human freedoms and stuff like that. So they have all these human comforts, and they're finally, like, breaking free of things. And the, cougar, like, really is about, like, having your own space and, like, doing your own thing. And so people, like, kind of match them together a little bit, and I think it's really fascinating. Honest as instinct represents the inclination to be right and upfront, communicating. Beasts rarely have a significant reason to lie. Organizer Wool is so good. So many of these combos, like, I think they're just so exciting and fun. And I want to play it all the time to, like, see the different ones. I'm really hoping we get to finish up our game, the long game that I've been playing with Kit and Kim Lamb and John, where I'm playing a late bloomer cougar, and Kit is you're the organizer wolf, and then we have Kim as the overachiever, maybe. I think you both took the O's. I'm trying to remember. It's just been a while since we played, but it's our longest running playtest, and my character, Bo, big surprise, is just, like, moments away. Overachiever Bison is what Kim is playing. It's absolutely brilliant combo, and totally it just blows my mind every single time we play. Bo is actually, like, 2 exposure marks away from being exposed to the whole town. So I've been, like, on tenterhooks, like, for weeks. It's something I really want to explore and see what happens whenever we, like, really tip that off after such a long playthrough. Beasts really have a significant reason to lie or hide their motives beyond hunting purposes. So, straightforward. Oh, that is not how you spell straightforward. Cool. Honest as an instinct represents the inclination to be forthright and upfront when communicating. Beasts rarely have a significant reason to lie or hide their motives beyond hunting purposes, so when communicating, they tend to be straightforward. That's simple enough. I keep on sliding down in my chair more, and then I look over on OBS, and I'm just, like, this tall. And it's just... had a game that I ran for the Gauntlet where one of the players was an late bloomer cougar, just like Bo, but was much younger, and was they actually played them as age 17, which is how I realized that I forgot to put in the text that you can't play someone under 18. And it was really funny because like their actual origin was that they got in a fight with an alligator that got loose from a zoo, and it was so great. Oh, I loved it. I loved it so much. It was really wild because like we ended up having the last session that we played with like the confrontation with the alligator where she like scared him away and like was like, you get out of my territory kind of thing, and it was really fun. That was one that I was running, so it was different. I've run turn a couple of times now myself, and like normally John runs, but like I just don't enjoy GMing as much, and it takes a lot more out of me. So you know, the struggles, they're real. So forceful, forceful as an instinct represents physical power and prowess. Oh my god. I'm typing so bad today. And with yeah, maybe I want to say like represents like, no, I think that works. These are less likely to be held back by concern for damage they might cause. So, very forceful beast might take physical action without much hesitation. All types. Okay. So forceful as an instinct represents physical power and prowess of all types. Beasts are likely to be held back by are less likely to be held back by concern for damage they might cause, so a very forceful beast might take physical action without much hesitation. I think I might go a little bit longer. Maybe just for like another half hour, so I can get a little bit more done, because it's nice to work while talking with people and stuff. But no one is obligated to stay. I just I'm going to very quickly take a moment to boost my tweets and stuff, to remind people that I'm going and let them know that it's keeping going on. It's like the hardest part about this is like trying to like let people know what's going on without being annoying. And like trying to like communicate to people while I'm communicating to you. Like 8 billion accounts also, which is just, you know, best. I sometimes wish like there was like 2 social medias. Be easier. So if anyone is here in the chat and able to say anything, please tell me how your day is going. I'd love to know how you're doing. It's always good to see you. I just never want to assume anyone's here and specifically ask who it is or whatever, so. So about social media kits as only two a way of splitting social media into two identities. I honestly kind of wish there was only two websites, one for longer form stuff and then one for brief simple stuff, that could be segmented into different profiles, because I currently have getting up into almost 15 different social media accounts, not counting forums. And that can be a lot, is all. It's a little exhausting. Distractedly can be kind of good as a way for a day to go, but I also understand that sometimes it's not. And yes, Manix, it is a lot of social media to have, but I have a lot of business profiles that I have to monitor, because I have to separate stuff. I can't have, I found out recently that I can't have thoughty stuff and my personal account in the same place, and I need to have a private, personal, and public account, and then I also need to have a Leading with Class account all on Twitter, and then that duplicates elsewhere. So we have a Leading with Class Instagram and we have a me Instagram, and yeah, it's a lot. I have a ton of different accounts. So when promoting the Kickstarter for a turn, it was actually really super challenging. Just trying to keep up with all of this. Trying to post to all the right places, and I had to go back on Facebook because you can't have a Kickstarter and not have Facebook, really. If you don't promote there, you lose a lot of audience. So I before the Kickstarters, I built up my audience a bit, not huge, but a little bit on Facebook. And I don't know, I sometimes wish I had one social media where I could have, pictures and text with longer form, posts almost G+ or Mastodon length, that also had a tab for not safe for work stuff, and then a Twitter-esque thing where I can do shorter posts and bits and bobs and share pictures and stuff as well. But yeah, that's the thing. Yeah, I mean, as far as having to have Facebook for kickstarting, it's I know people who have done it, but it does actually, from what I can tell, impact it. And whenever I bounced onto some of the Facebook communities before the end of the Kickstarter, it surprisingly boosted the Kickstarter. The problem is that actual marketing on Kickstarter is hard. You have to build up your audience and communicate to people and know how to make the posts and make sure they don't get flagged, and also go into communities and connect with people and everything. Honestly, Turn was incredibly successful, and even Behind the Mask was surprisingly successful for what it was, and with how little advanced advertising I had. But I did something 12 or so podcast interviews as well. It was a lot. I put a lot of time and work into the project and to promoting it, and I still didn't do enough. There is actually more I should have done. But it did a lot better than expected. Even KickTrack was not predicting that we would get to 20,000 by the end of the Kickstarter. So, it's hard. But yeah, having a lot of social media profiles is a thing. It kind of actually is a really good example of easy as a stat, because I benefit from having all these people I know and that I can communicate with, who can support me and all that stuff. But I also am constantly burnt out because of them, and I have no freedom. So it's it to me, I think it's a really good representation of how that stat, like, what it means really to have both the good and bad of it. So amoral as an instinct represents prioritization of self. Even communal beasts are highly driven by ensuring that their own well-being is addressed first, and then those of their fellows. I'm guessing are often, because some violate that rule. Like elephants screw me up. Okay. Amoral as an instinct represents prioritization of self. Even communal beasts are often heavily driven by ensuring their own well-being is addressed first, and then those of their fellows follow. Yeah. I think those are all addressed. If there's anything I said that sounds wonky, y'all, please let me know. Bloodlines. Sometimes it's hard to explain, like, mechanic stuff that's like, well, no, this thing exists for like a whole bunch of reasons, and some of them are like just to make sure that you can actually play the game, because bloodlines are important not just for all of the like narrative stuff and like what little like kind of mechanical function they have, but they're like important to like make it easier for people to play and to like build the town and everything. So it's hard to, like, sometimes explain that. Sometimes I feel like a bad game designer because I actually am really bad at explaining things. And it's gotten worse since, like, I've had my head injury and everything. Like, my ability to explain things is much harder. It's much less quality these days. But I'm trying. I hope that someday I do a little bit better. But that's what I have therapy for. So bloodlines are families within the town that may be shapeshifter families, but also may not. They, let's see. They serve many purposes, but one of the biggest purposes behind them is to give names to the people and represent the people of the town who are well known for good oil. Hey, thanks for stopping by, Kit. I really appreciate it. So bloodlines, like, one of their functions is to like give names to the people and represent the people of the town who are like well known. They also give the opportunity to make connections in the backstories of characters, including connections relevant to their shifter heritage. Let's see. Okay. The bloodlines help flesh out the town, and can allow diverse people to be represented. I'm trying to figure out. I had another thought for what I wanted to put here, and I'm like really struggling with it, and I can't remember why. Including answering questions relevant to shifter heritage. Have you I don't know if you are still here, Manixer, but I was wondering if you are here, have you been streaming much lately? I've kind of been missing streams a lot. Let's see. So give names to the people, represent them for their knowability, make connections in the backstories, including answering questions about shifter heritage. Bloodlines flesh out the town and allow diverse people to be represented. I can't remember what the other thing I was gonna say was. Oh well, I'll have to come back to it. So I think I'm just gonna put a little ... so maybe I remember to like actually try and add some more stuff there. And I'll go to force change. So force change is when shifters stress track reaches something about bloodlines being a bond. Would you I have no idea how to pronounce your username, Torfies. But if you could maybe elaborate on that. You say something about bloodlines being a bond. I would appreciate it. By the end of this. their agency. Will not act without the player's consent. Only their body changes. Okay. Force changes when a shifter's stress track reaches maximum, and they are physically forced to change to their opposite form by the end of the scene. During this time, the shifter will maintain their... The shifter maintains, not will maintain, jeez. The shifter maintains their agency and self-control, and does not act without the player's consent. Only their body changes through force, nothing else. Eh. Once in this form, when force changed, shifter must either find support through another shifter using a heart or a similar power, or find way to let's see. It occurred to you that bloodlines might consist of people who are in similar circumstances to you, people you can't ignore for better or worse, like close family, even though they might not actually be that. So yeah, like, bloodlines do represent actual, like, blood family, but can be extended outward, kind of, to, like, your extended family. Like, anyone who's connected to your bloodline is part of your bloodline. So you could have, you know, you're the Hots, and then, like, your sixth cousins are the Frankens, and you're still in the bloodline. That's still where they come from. So it definitely can matter. So yeah, bloodlines also create bonds between shifters and mundane PCs, between PC shifters and both shifter and mundane NPCs in the town, because they represent familial and social connections that branch out beyond immediate families. Even if someone doesn't share the same last name, if they're connected to it, to the bloodline, it represents social and political connections for the bloodlines create bonds between PC shifters and both shifter and mundane PCs in the town. Between and because they represent familial and social connections that branch out beyond immediate families. Even if someone doesn't share the same last name, if they're connected to the bloodline, it represents social and political connections for the characters. That represents. Yeah. What do you think? Let me know your thoughts on that summary there. See. When force changed, a shifter must either find support through another shifter using Have a Heart or a similar power, find a way to use Prioritize to reduce their stress and return to the other form, or act in ways to induce stress that will So, does a person have more intense relationship with people in their bloodline? Something that's part of the in-game. Is that something that's part of the in-game concept of bloodlines? Sort of. It depends. Like, you can have really close friends that are more important to you than anyone in your bloodline. But it's also, like, I would say it's more about the level of pressure someone can put on you. And, like, the social influence that they have. Like, there's no mechanism for, like, people in bloodlines, like, calling favors on you or something. But, like, whenever whenever we play, a lot of the time, like, the people in the bloodlines are the people who, like, call on you for, like, social things and represent, like, your responsibilities in the community and to your family. And it also depends on, like, how important you make shifter culture, like, if you make it formal or not and everything, whether that will become, like, something really pressury and heavy to deal with. So it's a little bit supposed to represent, like, real life families, because, like, sometimes even if you're totally divorced from your family in a lot of ways, you end up having to, like, do a lot of things to support them, whether you want to or not. Like, especially in small towns where things are more insular and tightly connected like that. Cool. Actually, I'm adding a sentence of members of their bloodline may call on them for favors, have expectations of them, or need their help at times. Because that's like probably something I should have noted in there. Thank you very much for bringing that up. I appreciate it a lot. Yeah, that's a fair bit of work done. That's pretty good. I think some of this I want to check with John about to get his perspective on how much I should be writing or what I should be writing for them. So birth month and age is important because so one of the things that's on your character sheet is your birth month and age, and the reason why birth month is important and not particularly like I don't normally ask for like the year. Your goals basically can be rewritten, or like new ones can be written whenever you hit your birth month each year in fiction. So as the tides turn, like as the seasons change, you can basically like whenever your birthday hits, you get to renew your goals that you've like passed up. And your age is only important because it's like relevant to how people interact with you and judge you. And I think that's like your age may be like maybe you are older but you look a lot younger because you have like an like shifter's disposition kind of thing, like because shifters, don't get sick and they don't, have like as many injuries and stuff like that. So, birth month is on the sheet because when you reach your birth month, you have the opportunity to write any new goals for any new goals to replace those you have achieved. Your age helps to inform your relationships with others in your community because it can factor in on respect for you, your access to authority, and who you would be most likely to have relationships and communication. Okay. The birth month is on the character sheet because when you reach your birth month, you have the opportunity to write any new goals to replace those you have achieved. Your age helps to inform your relationships with others in your community because it can factor in on people's respect for you, your access to authority, and who you would be most likely to have relationships and communication with. I think I'm going to be adding gender and pronouns to the sheet. If we can fit it. Your gender and pronouns are included on your character sheet because it helps to inform how others perceive you and interact with you. Your gender does not have to be the one represented to the book. But that can inform your play. This is hard to write. I don't know why. So basically, like I've been considering including gender on the character sheet because I want people to like be able to have their gender represented and their pronouns represented. It can inform your play and guide your inform your play. Even if it is concealed. Your pronouns include your pronouns that you want to be used by others and those that by others in play. Yeah, include your pronouns that you want to be used by others in play. If there is a conflict between characters, desired pronouns and those people use. That's complicated. I'm gonna have to come back to that. Basically, I'm trying to figure out if I want to explain, like, you can have conflicting pronouns between what you want and what people do for you, but I also don't want to encourage people to do, like, any harmful behaviors in the game, like, in play. I never want someone to be, like, misgendered as part of play. I just feel like that's not great. So I'll just say, include your pronouns that you want to be used by others in play. But yeah, that's a lot of work done. I really appreciate all of you stopping by. I needed to get some of this done, and it's sometimes easier for me to work when I have, like, the ability to, like, talk to people and engage with people while I'm doing it, especially with stuff like this, which I'm really struggling with. Responding to edits is, like, one of my hardest things to do. So I am going to actually finish up in a second here. If you want to learn more about Turn, the Kickstarter page is obviously still up. You can get to it easier by going to tinyurl.com/turnks, like Kickstarter. And you can find the beta there and details on the game, and we'll soon be releasing a pre-order page and backer kit thing. Just waiting for the payout so that we can afford to do that. And I will be probably uploading this to YouTube if I can, and basically putting it together as a Patreon update for my blog at patreon.com/thoughty, and that's for my website breecs.com. So please feel free to check those out. Any support is good support right now. Things are a little rough at home, so I'd really love to be able to keep doing more work. And if y'all think this was good, I may do another one of these the next time I do work. Well, one of the next times. I have to work on it all the time, but, like, I might do another special one coming up soon before I submit my edits and stuff. So please let me know your thoughts. Please check out the site. You can find me on at Thoughty Games on Twitter as well. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Let me see if I can manage to click on the buttons now. But hey, yes, thank you so much. Have a good day.